accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America.
U.S. Senator J.D. Vance on Wednesday formally accepted his nomination as Trump's running mate at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Trump detractor turned devotee chronicled his hard-scrabbled journey from a difficult childhood to the U.S. Marines, Yale Law School, venture capitalism, and the U.S. Senate. The 39-year-old vowed to fight for the working class if elected, appealing directly to the working and middle classes in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The three Rust Belt swing states are seen as likely to decide the November election.
This moment is not about me, it's about all of us, and it's about who we're fighting for. It's about the auto worker in Michigan wondering why out-of-touch politicians are destroying their jobs.
Vance accused what he described as career politicians like President Joe Biden of destroying communities like his industrial Ohio hometown.
For half a century, he's been the champion of every major policy initiative to make America weaker and poorer.
The Republican senator hailed Donald Trump's economic record in contrast.
And in 4 short years, Donald Trump reversed decades of betrayals inflicted by Joe Biden and the rest of the corrupt Washington insiders. He created the greatest economy in history for workers. Really was amazing.
He also praised Trump for his response after being grazed by a bullet at a campaign stop in Pennsylvania.
Consider the lies they told you about Donald Trump, and then look at that photo of him, defiant, fist in the air. When Donald Trump rose to his feet in that Pennsylvania field, all of America stood with him. They said he was a tyrant. They said he must be stopped at all costs. But how did he respond? He called for national unity, for national calm, literally right after an assassin nearly took his life.
Democrats criticized Vance for positions including his strict anti-abortion stance and his opposition to military aid for Ukraine. In a statement Wednesday, the Biden campaign accused him of standing for extremism. However, less than 2 years after assuming his first public office, Vance's primetime debut on Wednesday capped a meteoric rise. He is one of several high-profile Republicans whose reversals from Trump critics to loyalists underscore the former president's takeover of the party.
Thank you all.
Shares of chip makers fell Wednesday after President Joe Biden and his Republican rival Donald Trump each made news that sent a chilling effect through the semiconductor industry. Bloomberg reported the Biden administration has told allies it may use its most severe trade curbs on companies that continue to give China access to advanced chip technology. U.S.-listed shares of Dutch equipment provider ASML fell 11% in morning trading, even as the company beat second-quarter profit estimates. Shares of AI heavyweight NVIDIA lost ground, along with fellow chip makers AMD, Qualcomm, Broadcom, Micron Technology, and ARM Holdings. The Biden administration has been aggressive in its efforts to curb China's access to cutting-edge chips, with sweeping restrictions in October that limited exports of AI processors designed by NVIDIA and other U.S. firms. And in a separate report in Bloomberg Businessweek, Trump questioned U.S. support for Taiwan, saying the island, that China claims as its territory, should pay for U.S. protection. That sent U.S.-listed shares of Taiwan Semiconductor, the world's largest contract chip maker, down 6%. Taiwan is home to several semiconductor makers, and analysts have warned that any conflict over the island may shatter the global economy. But one chip company bucked Wednesday's downward trend. Shares of Intel were up more than 2% in midday trading, with analysts pointing to its efforts to build plants in the U.S.
Top U.S. Federal Reserve officials on Wednesday indicated that interest rate cuts are getting closer. Fed Governor Christopher Waller said the time to cut rates was, quote, drawing closer during a speech at the Kansas City Fed. And New York Fed President John Williams used the same language in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. They cited the improved trajectory of inflation and a labor market now in better balance. The remarks appear to set the stage for a reduction at the central bank's meeting in September. Earlier this week, Fed Chair Jerome Powell and others noted the increased confidence that price gains are continuing to slow and move toward the Fed's 2% target. This is despite a short-lived bump in inflation earlier this year. By the Fed's preferred measure, inflation in May was running at a 2.6% annual rate, down from the 7.1% peak reached during the COVID-19 pandemic. The June data is due next week. The central bank is widely expected to keep its benchmark rate unchanged at its next meeting, which begins July 30th. Markets have fully priced in a cut in September, with 2 more by the end of the year solidly reflected in interest rate futures pricing.
Kenya's police have banned demonstrations in the heart of the capital, Nairobi, until further notice. That's after weeks of anti-government protests initially sparked by proposed tax hikes. Late on Wednesday, Acting Head of Police Douglas Kanja-Korocho said there was credible evidence that organised criminal groups are planning to take advantage of the ongoing protests to execute their attacks, including looting. No demonstrations will be permitted, the statement read, in the Nairobi Central Business District and its surroundings until further notice to ensure public safety. Some activists have since been sharing calls for people to gather with camping gear at Uhuru Park, next to the Central Business District. A Reuters reporter said there was a heavy police presence in the city on Thursday morning. Responding to the protest ban, activist Boniface Mwangi wrote on social media that the police and President William Ruto have no power to suspend rights guaranteed by the Constitution. At least 50 people are reported to have been killed in the youth-led protests amid clashes with police. The unrest has continued even after President Ruto scrapped the tax proposals and fired most of his cabinet. Activists are saying they want Ruto to resign and are calling for systemic changes to clean up corruption and address poor governance.
The Trump effect is rocking Asian chip stocks, including Taiwan giant TSMC. On Thursday, the world's biggest contract chip maker reported a 36% jump in second quarter profit. That beat market forecasts and was driven by a surge in demand for AI products. And yet, shares in the firm, Asia's most valuable listed company, closed down by 2.4%. Markets were focused on earlier comments by Donald Trump, who said Taiwan had taken 100% of America's chip business. He says the island should pay the US for its defense in return, adding geopolitical alarm to the tech tensions. Taiwan's foreign ministry felt compelled to respond on Thursday, with a spokesman saying it was committed to boosting defense spending and working with Washington. But Trump's comments added to existing tensions over US-China relations. Reports in recent days have said the Biden administration could step up curbs on chip exports, prompting a big sell-off for tech stocks. Thursday saw South Korea's SK Hynix lose around 4%, while Japan's Tokyo Electron was off more than 8%. That followed a big drop on Wall Street, where tech stocks saw $500 billion wiped off their market value.
The White House says President Joe Biden has tested positive for COVID-19 on Wednesday. That came during a campaign trail trip to Las Vegas. Early in the day, he was seen shaking hands with diners at a restaurant. Biden was due to speak for Unidos US, a Latino civil rights organization, when the CEO came on stage and announced he would not be attending the event.
He just tested positive for COVID. He said to tell my folks that we're not going to get rid of him that quickly.
The US president has since boarded Air Force One to return home to Delaware, where he'll self-isolate after experiencing mild symptoms.
I know how to do this job.
The 81-year-old president remains defiant as calls grow for him to drop his bid for another term in office. Some fellow Democrats feel he's too old to seek re-election. On Wednesday, ABC News, citing sources, said Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer told Biden in a meeting Saturday it would be better for the country and the Democratic Party if he ended his re-election campaign. Schumer's office called the ABC report idle speculation and said Schumer, quote, conveyed the views of his caucus directly to President Biden. Earlier on Wednesday, House Democrat Adam Schiff came out publicly to call Biden to pass the torch to someone else. A Reuters Ipsos poll that ended Tuesday found some 40% of Democratic registered voters said Biden should drop his re-election bid. Meanwhile, some 65% of independent registered voters agreed with them.
Under the once lush slopes of the Nyiragongo volcano in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, traders are hard at work. These chest-high sacks of charcoal in the town of Kibati are the product of deforestation that has, according to the United Nations, reached unprecedented levels. That's amid an ongoing insurgency in North Kivu province by the M23 rebel group. The violence has displaced over 1.7 million people, like Jacques Muzayi.
I'm here because we're starving in the camp. We decided to produce charcoal to feed our children.
The insecurity has worsened pressure on the region's once densely forested hillsides and the Virunga National Park, home to many of the world's last mountain gorillas. Each morning in Kibati, crowds of locals and displaced people enter the park's territory in search of logs to burn to make charcoal. Others go deeper to cut trees for planks or plant crops in newly open land. And that's all happening in a park that is one of the most biodiverse territories on the continent, home to 3 types of great ape, bush elephants, and the endangered okapi, nicknamed Africa's unicorn. Bantu Lukambo is head of a local environmental organisation.
Frankly, for us as locals, it breaks our hearts, because for us the park is everything. We live because of this park. So when we see that the park is being decimated, it breaks our hearts. And today we estimate that only around 20 square kilometres of forest in the southern sector remains.
In 2021, authorities declared martial law in Congo's east in response to the rising violence. According to a UN report, armed actors on both sides have profited off the production or trade in wooden planks in the areas they control. Illegal and uncontrolled logging, the July 8th report said, has led to the destruction of significant swathes of virgin forest in protected areas of Virunga. And here's what that looks like in satellite images taken between August 2022 and June 2024. Data from Global Forest Watch, an initiative that uses satellites to track deforestation, showed that annual tree cover loss in Virunga rose over 22% to 16,813 acres in 2021. A further 17,928 acres were lost in 2022. At a roadside depot in Kibati, planks, some of which have come from trees in Virunga, are unloaded off the back of motorbikes. Christophe Lewis, one of those displaced by the violence, says you earn up to 500 Congolese francs, that's about 18 US cents, per bike. He says he wants the authorities to do everything possible to end the war, because that is what pushes people to destroy the environment. If the war ends, he says, they will stop cutting the trees.
The Rasanda Salt Lake in northern Serbia has dried up for the first time, as the Balkans and much of Europe continue to swelter in a prolonged heat wave this week. Most of the countries in the Balkans are expecting high temperatures of around 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Vladimir Djurjevic is a Belgrade-based meteorologist. He says climate change could make such super hot summers more frequent.
The water supply is under pressure because the heat wave is accompanied by a drought, and people use more water at such high temperatures. As a result, we can already see that in many cities in Serbia, people are having problems with their water supply.
The Serbian Salt Lake is known for the healing properties of its mud. A 72-year-old resident told Reuters the area was once a marshland, but now there is no marsh. On Wednesday, Serbia's Public Health Institute declared dangerous conditions in 10 municipalities. Elsewhere in the Balkans, North Macedonia and Albania were battling with forest fires, and Croatia saw the highest ever temperatures in the Adriatic Sea. Searing temperatures have also impacted countries like Greece, France Spain, Poland and Ukraine.
Shares in chip gear giant ASML tumbled on Wednesday despite a strong second quarter performance. Europe's largest technology company beat forecasts and showed a rise in AI-linked bookings, but investors were alarmed by the possibility of tighter restrictions on the Dutch firm's exports to China. Bloomberg reported Tuesday the US has told allies, including the Netherlands, it may take action to restrict exports of chip equipment to China if they fail to do so themselves. ASML is already restricted from selling most of its advanced product lines in China. The company declined to comment on the report. The Dutch Foreign Ministry could not immediately be reached for comment. New CEO Christophe Fouquet said ASML viewed 2024 as a transition year with broadly flat performance as it prepares for a strong 2025. He said the firm sees strong developments in AI driving most of the industry's recovery and growth. Net income of $1.74 billion for the second quarter was down close to a fifth from a year earlier, but beat analyst forecasts. Revenue fell nearly a tenth to about $6.8 billion, but again beat projections. The stock was down over 7% in early trading.